It's time for the last session of the day and the last presentation of the day. And we have a slight change of, not slight, a complete change of presenter. This is not the CEO of IRLAB, it's the CFO of IRLAB Therapeutics, Victor Sieverts. Welcome.
Thank you. Wow, thanks. Thank you for having me and for letting me present IRLAB. Last of the companies here, so I hope it's presenting or the best for last. IRLAB is focusing on Parkinson's disease, and we dare to say that we have a world-leading portfolio of Parkinson drugs, and we're aiming to reduce the burden for the people living with Parkinson's. We also had a disclaimer, as you saw. So why are we doing this? Well, there are more than 10 million people in the world having Parkinson's today, and it's expected to double within 10 to 15 years. So it's a huge societal problem. Parkinson's is a lifelong disease, and so far there are no treatments for it. So it's lacking effective drugs. So what we're trying to do is to find drugs that improve the lives with those living with Parkinson's. And the way we do that is with our super scientists that's rooted in the laboratories of Arvid Carlsson, who won the Nobel Prize in the year 2000. And we also have a proprietary platform using phenotypic screening to find molecules that we believe that no one else can find, which are efficacious and safe. And this means also that the costs for developing these drugs will become lower than with other kind of discovery. So the portfolio, we have two lead compounds. The first one is mesdopetam. It's developed aiming at LIDS, levodopa-induced dyskinesia in Parkinson's disease. Levodopa-induced dyskinesia is something that occurs after like 5 to 7 years of treatment with levodopa. And basically all Parkinson patients get levodopa as their treatment for the hallmark symptoms, the slowness of movement, the stiffness, and the tremor that we usually think of when we think of Parkinson's. Here we had results from a phase 2b study earlier this year. There are also many possibilities to increase or to expand indications in mesdopetam. The other lead compound is pirepemat. That is aimed at falls and fall frequency, and also the fear of falling, because if you think about Parkinson patients fall a lot. In the ongoing phase 2b study we have now, we see that patients fall several times a week. So imagine that you sit in your couch and you're afraid that if you get up, you will fall. That will put a burden or put a constraint on your daily life. So this is ranked as the #1 problem by people living with Parkinson's. We also have a preclinical portfolio of 3 compounds so far. We have IRL757 aiming at apathy. And this is not only Parkinson's, it's also apathy and other neurological indications. And we also have IRL942, which is aimed at cognitive improvement in neurology, which means that it's not only Parkinson's for this indication or this molecule as well. And basically all people, or many people, get a little bit cognitive impairment as they grow older. Last, by no means least, we have IRL1117, which is aimed at the hallmark symptoms of Parkinson's disease, and we hope to have this as the next generation Parkinson's medication, replacing levodopa. And it's not a new formulation or a new administration of levodopa, it's a totally new mechanism. So, Parkinson's. Well, it is a lifelong disease. And when you get diagnosed, it's about in the middle of this picture, you have a few symptoms. And then the symptoms grow, and it starts with the motor symptoms. And then as time goes by, you add the psychiatric symptoms like psychosis, hallucinations, cognitive impairment, apathy, and so on. And with our compounds, we basically cover most of those symptoms. So we feel that we really have this world-leading portfolio of Parkinson's medications. Speaking a little bit more about mesdopetam, it is a D3 antagonist, and we actually found out that this was efficacious, and then after we did that, there has been quite some science showing that D3 receptors are involved in the levodopa-induced dyskinesia. It's a quite big market, 1.5 to 2 million Parkinson patients at the moment that has LIDs, and this will of course also double within the next coming 10 to 15 to 20 years. Also, there is possibilities for expansion, indication expansion, and the most obvious is psychosis in Parkinson's disease, but also prevention of both psychosis and the LIDs. However, of course, this would need more studies in the clinic to be able to prove this, but that is a hypothesis. We had results from a phase 2b study earlier this year. And to conclude, I will not go through this in detail, but to conclude, you can see that we had dose-dependent efficacy or effects in across the board in every scale that we measured. And those results were significant, and it was also clinically meaningful in the scales that FDA deems appropriate, or that they look the most at when approving drugs in this indication. We also had quite astonishing results in off time, and the results we show in this study actually matches results that medications have been approved only for off. But we are focusing on the LIDs, but we have the off time as a sugar on top. The other important thing in drug development is, of course, the side effects. And happy to say that the safety and tolerability profile was on par with placebo in at all doses. So basically, you don't have to pay anything in side effects for getting the good effects from this from mesdopetam. So we believe these results are really good. Pirepemat falls is something that happens to people with Parkinson. It has to do with the disease in the brain. So basically half of the Parkinson patients fall recurrently, which means several times a month. And by falls, we mean falling to the ground. It's not just losing your balance, it's falling. And it incurs, of course, huge cost for society to take care of all these fall injuries. So it is very important. We are currently in the middle of a phase 2b study. We expect, we now think that recruitment will go into Q1 next year, and we're aiming to report top-line results during the first half of next year. So the preclinical projects, as I said before, 757 for apathy. We have 942 for the improvement of cognitive function, and we have 1117 for the hallmark symptoms. And the important thing here is that it's a once daily, so you just have to take it once a day. It's oral, so it's a pill or a capsule, and the effect lasts for a long time. That's not how current medication works. Levodopa, for example, you could need to take levodopa up to 8 or 10 times a day. So we believe that this has great potential as if the things that we see in the clinical settings can be reproduced in the clinic. Our key priorities, we have an upcoming end of phase 2 meeting with FDA with mesdopetam, and we're currently focusing a lot on putting together a briefing book to the FDA. In the pirepemat study, we're focusing on getting the patients in. And in the preclinical assets, we are trying to finalize the toxicological studies and the other things that's needed for applying for phase 1. So, to conclude, we see a lot of possibilities for high value creation in the next year or year and a half, with a lot of inflection points to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you. So, starting with a broader look at Parkinson's, you said that there's a lack of drugs, lack of treatment for Parkinson's disease. Why is it proving so difficult to treat this disease?
Well, that is, I'm CFO, sorry, to probably because not enough money has been spent.
That's always your answer, no?
On a serious note, I don't know. So you would have to ask my colleagues, my scientist colleagues.
But it's definitely a field where there's a huge unmet medical need.
It is, and for example, the 1117 that we just not recently discovered, but that we have started to develop now, it is the first D1, D2 agonist that the biotech society has searched for such a molecule for 50 or 60 years, because it's a problem that it doesn't survive in the brain normally. But it seems like our molecule actually survives and have good efficacy and long-term effects. So
a problem is simply the brain is a difficult environment maybe to treat?
Yes, probably.
We also have a question about whether or not out-licensing is still an option for mesdopetam, and if not, how are you planning to fund the phase 3 study?
Out-licensing or business development is absolutely a priority for us in mesdopetam. So that is top priority for IRLAB at the moment. And as you point, if we were not to license it, we would have to fund it, of course.
Right. What kind of traction have your business development activities had so far? We've heard from several experts that investors are focused on late-stage projects at the moment.
Yes, but a compound that is almost in phase 3 or phase 3 ready from all technical aspects, I would say that is quite late stage. And I'm not able to share any details from the BD, of course, but we're confident.
What kind of expertise or experience have or do Clintrex and Profarma add to support your regulatory strategy and preparations for the phase 3? Are you all set? If you could elaborate a little bit on that.
I don't think that we're all set, but they are contributing extremely much. Having good American consultants helping us and it's really, really helpful. It couldn't be done without good experts from them, and we're really happy that PPG or Profarma Group has chosen to work with us, and also that Clintrex with Carl Kieberts, for example, and his colleagues, they are very, very good KOLs in the field and knows everything about how the regulatory pathways works within the FDA and how to get a compound like mesdopetam or our other drugs approved finally. So
they are key to your strategy on the US market?
Yes, they are, absolutely.
As a final question then, how do you envision IRLAB's position in the market to evolve over the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, we have 5 compounds which are totally independent from each other. And we have a platform which can produce more compounds going forward. So we're aiming to build on that and to be successful within the next couple of years.
So an ever stronger position.
Exactly. I should probably say to be the leading pharmacology company in Sweden or the world, universe.
Well, on that note, hope you remember that Victor said that. Thank you so much, Victor, for the presentation.
Thank you for being here.
And I will hand over to our CEO, Jonas Söderström, for the last point on the program, an expert insight.
Thank you very much. Our final program point, save the after-work bubbly session. It's going to be, a short interview, market outlook with NASDAQ. NASDAQ Copenhagen, here represented by Carsten Boring, your head of listings and capital markets at NASDAQ.
Yes.
Have you been bracing yourself for my extremely tough questions?
I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, don't be. I will just hold you personally responsible for all the,
of course,
bad things that are going on right now. No, jokes aside, we were standing here on this stage a year ago.
Yeah.
And 12 months more or less has passed. And I remember in a presentation earlier today, Göran Forsberg of Cantargia, he said that, the last year has been marvelous for us at Cantargia. So great for him.
Yeah.
How would you say that your last 12 months have been at NASDAQ?
They have been tough.
Yeah.
It has been tough to follow many of our clients. There's also a lot of clients who are doing good. But when I were here last year, we could see what I'm looking at most of the time if I want to have the temperature of the risk market, so to say. I'm looking at the NASDAQ Biotech Junior Index. It's an index we have in the US on our mothership on Times Square, where we have more than 200 companies present in that. And it's biotech companies up to $5 billion. That's what we call junior indexing. Mm. And it's excluding companies below $200 million. Mm. So we don't have a lot of the small companies included. And last year when I were here, I was a little bit optimistic because I could see it has raised from the bottom of 50% up. Mm. And we hope it would continue that journey. Unfortunately, when I look back at the index right now, it's 30% down since last year. So maybe I think we have reached the bottom now, but I'm not sure, to be honest. Yeah. It is difficult times out there, especially within biotech, and it is close to my heart with biotech.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to make any promises here today. We won't hold it against you.
I can promise I will do what I can.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's actually one of my follow-up questions. And what can and what are NASDAQ doing to support the companies that you have listed who are now struggling?
So we are, every day we work with our trading machine. And that's not on the listing side, but we are trying to build it up so it has the best outreach to all investors. Even though that there are fewer investors in the biotech space right now, we are trying to reach them in any ways we can. And that's what we're doing every day. And in fact, if you look at our trading machine here in the Nordic, 80% of all the investors is from outside the Nordic region. So we have a good outreach for people to look at our shares. We had the earlier discussion about the Nordic being in heaven in biotech. And we are in many sense because we are quite good at bringing companies public. And that with that comes transparency and visibility. And one thing that is important for many companies to realize also is when we look at, and maybe it's also, I don't know how many private investors there are here, but quite a lot, I guess. When we look at the prices right now on biotech, they are pretty low. They are embarrassing low. Maybe if you are trying to pick it up in a venture fund or something, it could be good. But I'm not sure that venture fund can take advantage of this because they can't buy the companies for this price right now. It's so low, so the big investors in the companies will not sell off. But it's an opportunity for private investors to go in and buy for 10,000 or 20,000 kroner, Swedish or Danish, it doesn't matter. But it's an opportunity for private investors because we have we can go in and buy. But the big funds can't because you will not sell off that many shares right now.
Well, provided that you have dry powder, that is,
That's
unless
correct.
you're at the bad end of
Yeah,
80% decline or something like that.
But you need to have a good and sustainable company. And it is right now important for many biotech companies to look at the cost right now and see how long can you prolong the runway with your capital. And then I think there's been said so many clever things up here the last 2 days, and I will really recognize the job you're doing, because there's not a lot of people who have focused on these small companies. But it is important to look at the cost. And it's also important to look at your investor base. As you said, I told you so earlier this day. And we can all reflect on a lot of things, but we just need to realize the last 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, there's been a lot of capital out there without any demands. Mm-hmm. Now you have to look at your investor portfolio and find clever people to support you for a longer journey. And they are out there. It's not easy to find them, but they are out there. Mm-hmm.
So we, like you alluded to earlier panels, where then specialist investors, they might have the view that you need the good science, and they look at science. They have scientific experts doing the due diligence on the science side to spot the gold nuggets. But in all fairness, NASDAQ and the other exchanges have brought in quite a few early stage companies, and you could argue that you have done the due diligence on the financial side and on the administrative side and so on to keep the hygiene level there straight. But the science part, if there are projects now that don't really attract specialist investors, would it be possible to in any way screen that part of companies? I'm thinking about the future now. Tough question.
Yeah, it is a tough question, because it's very dear to our DNA to help companies to raise capital. And when we invented First North in 2005, it was to help small companies to get access to capital. And I think maybe we have not been good enough, even though I think we have tried, to warn private investors about going into everything. But there is a big disclaimer on the front page of any IPO prospects or anything else that we are bringing to market. But we need to be better and keep on investing in the private investors as well. And we are doing that, and you're doing a good job, and we are sponsored here. That we need to help private investors to understand risk. But that being said, it was not because I don't want to talk to a lot of angry investors, but it's not often that I hear this.
No.
As I hear from, so you have to ask me this question, and I hear from journalists, and I hear from especially VCs and everything else. They think they are much better, and boo-boo, or they're too early going public. But I can understand a business leader who wants to take the company public when the money is there, because you can stay longer with your share, and you can take your company to the next level. And in all fairness, we all need, there was just too much money out there. If we look at all the VC's investments in biotech, they are slaughtered. There's a lot of VCs pulling out of this space as well. Even private equity companies went into to biotech. We have never seen that, because they wanted to go in and get rid of some of the money. They had too much funds. And if we look at our IPO index in the US, and we look at the companies that are got listed from VCs, they are down 70% over the last 2 years. So they are not doing better as many other companies or founder-driven companies in the Nordic. And it's not to say we're without anything, but it's the way it is. There was too much money out there. We can see that. We knew it. Many are, but
too much money. That sounds like a huge problem.
That's not the problem now.
No, it's not. that sorted itself out, so to speak. So, about you mentioned the IPO, and I can imagine though during these boom years of many companies seeking to go public and doing the IPO and bringing capital, which was plentiful. I imagine you were, as a listing manager, you were probably one of the most popular guys in the room at the parties. And how's that nowadays?
Yeah, but I don't see myself in that as I'm running infrastructure, and you will always have need for infrastructure. And we are helping the companies we have now to perform better and to have a platform to raise capital on. And that's our purpose right now, to try to make things better. And I've been in this game for so long, so I've seen ups and downs so many times. So the only thing I can hope for right now is that we will get faster back on track.
But that was actually one of my next questions, because we've asked several different kinds of experts here what they feel is the signs to be looking for the current headwinds to sort of die out and a change to come, a positive change. Then with your long time experience, and I'm sure you have some analytics team, especially in the US, then who have their lookout very far ahead. What do you see?
It's not easy to see anything right now. And I was also, I heard the panel with all the investment bankers. I used to be an investment banker myself, and I'm talking to a lot of business people right now, in big companies as well. And what I hear from investment bankers, to be honest, they don't know anything more than we do.
What?
Sorry to say. You need to look at your own risk profile. You need to look at your own stomach field. What do you think about Christine Lagarde will do? Today she said she will keep the interest rate stable for now, for the first time in 2 years. That's a boom for our share prices today. But next month, what will she do then? So it is all about looking into yourself. Do you think you have a decent company you can bring public? And we will see IPOs pretty soon, because as they also said, there is private transactions going on right now. And that means that if the M&A market is running, you have some kind of agreement of the price of the companies. And now we just need to have that into the investors to say, okay, we need to pick this up. There's a M&A going on. We need to be on this journey as well. But they are so disappointed, many of the institutional investors right now. And they also need back to some of the VCs who are standing and say, hey, it's good time. We can buy cheap now. But they have brought a lot of company to the market as well. And there's some trust they need to build up to the institutional investors right now. But I talk to, when we look at, back to your question, what are we looking at? We're looking at some of the big companies going into to the US. And we have seen quite a few the last couple of months. And one of them is completely out of this, but it's Birkenstock, the shoe company. And it's just to make my point, and it's not to be quoted somewhere. But every European and US banks were involved in that. There was a list of so many banks. It didn't reach the IPO price at any time. It has been trading below IPO price. So back to, are they clever than us? Are they, come on, 15 banks, and they don't even get the IPO price on the first day in the opening auction.
With a product that you can actually understand.
You can see it, you can feel it, you can walk on it. And then we have ARM as another technology-driven company, and it's also trading below. Back to the VIX, the volatility index they talked about earlier. But it is back to what do you believe? Is it the right moment for your company to go public? And can you find an investment banker who dare to do this and say go? I don't know.
So, well, dire times spark changes in many different ways. And one thing that I learned during this event, among many things I've learned, was that there is a, well, small but technical, you could say, change coming for the, some of the companies at First North, for example. And that has to do with what you were talking about, the trading and the infrastructure, I guess you could call it. The fact that illiquid stocks will be not traded as normal, but actually in some kind of auction system instead. Can you briefly, that's a detailed thing, but can you just briefly
It is
explain?
a small detail, but it's important, especially for private investors. We see a lot of companies, shares trading with a big spread right now. As a ask and bid price is too far away from each other. And if you in 2 quarters have a spread of more than 7%, you will be transferred to a list by the, I guess it's the middle of January, we will take off. We call it auction trading. And there you will be traded 5 times a day. And it should hopefully help that you will gather the ones who want to sell and buy in these clusters and to make a better price at that time. But it's, to be honest, we don't know how it will work, but it's also a part of us to trying to modernize our trading platform. We don't necessarily always need to have, okay, you need to trade from 9 to 7 or 7, 5:30 here in Sweden. Maybe we can change things. And in Sweden, you know it because the A shares has been traded in that way.
A shares, okay.
Yeah, for quite some time. But it's also encouraged companies to look at themselves and say, okay, I need to take care of my investors. And how do I do that? If I don't have the liquidity to have a narrow spread, as if I'm buying a share or selling a share in a company with a spread with more than 7%, I'm losing 7% day one I'm buying the shares. That's a lot. That's a lot, and the only one who can count for that is the CEO of the company. So if I'm a CEO of the company, I would like to have narrow spreads. If I can't get it myself in my share, I need to maybe get a liquidity provider and pay for that.
If you're a CEO of the company and buy shares too aggressively, then you have a big problem.
Yeah, that's fair. But you as a CEO, you need to pay me back. Yeah. If I'm losing 7% day one, you need to first build up the 7% and then add 10% on that before I'm happy. That's 17%. That's a lot.
Yeah, you're better than me on maths. But so I'm sure that's not going to be popular with the day traders, though.
No.
But that's their problem.
That's their problem.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other shares.
We have
more than 1,000, so I guess...
we have problems of our own to worry about. Yeah. So we are running out of time, but is there anything, like I've said to previous speakers, is there anything positive you could add to instill some hope? I mean, I think that companies and investors alike are, grasping for positive signals.
The positive thing this day is that Christine Lagarde didn't raise the interest rate.
That's one good thing.
That's really positive. Yeah. And then we also need to have the inflation down. Because if I'm on top of my 17%, also have, like you have in Sweden, 6.5% inflation, you need to build that on as well. So it adds up. So we need to have the inflation down and the interest rate down. And then we, as a private investor, as I started to say, you need to look at the opportunities right now and say, okay, let's buy some shares. And then you will keep the CEO happy as well, because there will be right issues and everything else. You need to support these. And I think there are opportunities in these companies. One thing I said last year, and it still goes for this year, is that biotech is very interesting in the sense that many companies, due to high interest rate, high inflation rate, have a very bad business model right now. But biotech is the only sector where you get better day after day because you're closer to inflection point of your search.
Provided that you can afford to
yeah,
get
and you
there.
reach there and you don't got caught in a 2B or anything else. But it is tough for biotech right now. But we've been here before and we will survive.
It's going to be interesting to see when you come back next year.
Yes,
To see
that's
if
a
we
promise.
have a bigger smile on our faces.
I will
then.
have a big smile next
Yeah.
year.
I'd like to thank you, Karsten, not only for taking the time to talk to us, but actually also to NASDAQ for supporting the BioStock Life Science Summit. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. And on that note, I also want to thank our other sponsors. We have Axel Group, we have DNB Back Bay, Nordic Issuing, Accountor, and Hagen Carlson Recruitment. So I'm sure you have been able to meet them all in the mingle session. And speaking of mingle sessions, I'm right now the only thing that stands between you and a glass of bubbles. So I don't. It's a risky position, if any. So I just wanted to mention that we have set the dates for next year's summit event. So it's going to be November 20 and 21st, and it's going to be here on our home turf again. So you're of course all very welcome to join us again then. And if you by any chance have missed a session during this event, then you can check it out because we have been recording it, so you can check it out. I think next week it will be available. Big thanks to everyone for coming and for supporting all the companies, and a huge thanks to the BioStock team who's put everything together. And with that, I think we should just go and get some refreshments and have a nice evening. Thank you very much, and see you next year.